Hi, this is Al Williams of Sunset Hill Solutions. This is my first business objects video in a while. I've been kind of busy lately, but I'd like to do a video here showing you the differences and similarities between tables and sections in Web Intelligence. Now, every report that you have is going to have one or both of these unless you only have charts in your report, so it's something that everybody uses at some point. So let's get started by creating a new report, and we'll use the eFashion universe as the source for this. Okay, let me just pause the video while I select the objects that I want. Okay, so I've added a number of objects from the eFashion universe: state, city, store name, the product line, the category, the SKU description, sales revenue, year, quarter, and month. Now I also want to add a filter on the product lines here, so I'll just drag the lines into the query filters, and we'll just make values from list here, and I'll select accessories, jackets, leather, and outerwear. And click OK. Now I'll run the query. So this raw data is what I'm going to use as the basis for comparing the functionality that we have with tables and sections in Web Intelligence. Just going to do a little bit of housekeeping before I get started. I'm not sure I want to have the quarter and month in this report, so I'm just going to get rid of those for now. And as far as the description for the product, we'll leave that out at this point. So I'll get rid of that. I'll just move the year column over in between category and sales revenue. And in fact, I'll remove the category from here as well. So we're left with the state, the city, the store name, the product line, the year, and the sales revenue. One thing I always like to do with my reports I develop in Web Intelligence is to keep one tab that just has the raw data and create other tabs for actually formatting the report. So I'm going to right click on report here and select duplicate report. So now I have a separate tab here. I'm going to call this, I'm going to rename it to raw data. And for report 1 here, I'm just going to rename this to table example. So I just right clicked on the tab, and below here there's rename report option. And because the formula for this cell here is report name, it automatically renamed the text here as table example, which is the name we have of the tab down here. So I'm just going to move this over a little bit. And then I'm going to, I could do this later, but I want to do it now. I want to add a formula here to sum the sales revenue. If I do this now, every time I create a break in the table, it's going to automatically create a sum at the break level. If I don't do it now, I'd have to do that later on. So if I go to analysis and functions, and I want to add a sum to this column, if I go down to the very end of the report now, we should see a total, a grand total, and we do. Should make this column a bit wider so you can see it. Okay, so $11 million is the grand total, and we're going to be adding breaks in this table to have total sales by the different breaks that we set in the next part of this video. The next thing I want to do is actually select this whole table here. I want to give it a name, and I'll show you why a little bit later. So I right click on the table, select format table. So by default the name is block 1. So I'm just going to change this to sales data. This is handy if you do have more than one block of data in your table and you apply sorts or you apply filters, which we're going to do shortly. So that's all I'm going to do right now is change the name of it. Click apply. The next thing I want to do before I add any breaks to this is I want to sort the data in the table. So while I still have the table selected here, if I go to analysis and sort, and then I could do a sort by individual columns at this point very easily, but I just want to go to advanced right now. I want to set a number of different sorts. So it's showing me that I'm managing the sorts on this sales data block, which is one of the reasons I wanted to rename it. So I'm going to start adding some sorts here. First one I want to do it is on state. So as you can see, I paused the video for a minute. I've added sorts to the state, city, year, lines, and store name. So I click apply, and then OK. So now I have the sorts that I want before I start breaking this table up. Now I'm going to add some breaks to the table. So there's a couple ways I could do it. I could right click on the table and go down to break and manage breaks. Or from the top here, again, if I have analysis tab set and I have the table selected, I can just select, let me select the table again, break and manage breaks. Okay, so here is my sales data block, and I want to start adding some breaks here. So the first thing I'm going to break on is the state. I also want to break on the city, the store name, and we'll leave it like that for now. We'll break on those three, click apply. Okay. I want to add one more break for the year here, so I'm going to go to break. Here I'm going to go to manage breaks and add and year. Okay. Alright, so now we've got breaks for state, city, store name, product line, and the year. Now this doesn't look very good obviously at this point. I don't want to have all of these headers showing up here, so we have to do some formatting here to take care of that. I only want to show one header up here at the state level, so I'm going to go to break and manage breaks again. So with the state, we see this break header, we'll leave that. For city, we'll remove it, click apply. You'll see there's one less row up here now with those headers, and for year as well. And we're actually going to remove it at the state level too, because we already have another header up there that was placed when we originally created the table. Okay, let's click on OK. So we're getting there. We have a break now for state, city, store name, product lines, and the year. Now I did say earlier if I added the sum at the total of the report, it would automatically create it at the break levels. Well, it hasn't. That was my mistake. So I actually have to create now a formula here. And the easy way to do that is go back into the analysis and functions. I want to click create a sum. And I want to create it in just a minute here. There we go. So now it's created a sum at the year level, the store name level, the city level, and also we scroll down a bit further at the state level. Let's go back to California. Yeah. There we go, up a little bit more, California. So total for the state as well. But this doesn't look very nice. It's kind of ugly, so we're going to do some formatting here to make this table look a little bit nicer, a little bit more readable. Before I do any more formatting on this table, I want to talk briefly about filters. So if I click on the filter button up here and add new filter. You'll see here it says sales data, so it's recognizing that I have one block of data in this report, and it's asking me to create a filter with a search. So I'll go ahead and add a filter. So I'll say the city is equal to, and I'll just say Austin, and click apply and OK. So now I'm only seeing the sales for the city of Austin, Texas. Typically you set filters at the data access level. It's fine to set them here as well, but you don't want to be bringing back a million rows from your data provider and doing the filtering at the report level, because it's a lot of extra overhead that you don't really need. But adding filters to a smaller subset of data like I'm doing here, there's no issue with that. But one thing I do want to point out though is that this filter was applied at the table level. If you have multiple tables or blocks in your report, you have to make sure you apply the filter in the right place. And what I mean by that, if I go back here to, I want to edit this filter, so I have to select the table. I've added a filter at this vertical table sales data level. If I had another table in this report, that filter for Austin would not be applied there. If I have multiple blocks in the report and I want to have a filter created for all of them, I have to do it at this level, at the actual tab level or report level within your Web Intelligence document. This is something I had issues with when I first started working with tables, because I was applying the filter at this level right in the block, and I'd subsequently added another block, and the filter wasn't in effect. And the reason again is because you have to be careful at which level you apply the filters to. So I just wanted to point that out before I do any more formatting to this table. And I also want to undo this. I want to have all my data back here. I click undo. Should be getting, yeah, guess back where it was before with the data for all of the states. The next thing I want to do to make this report a bit easier to read is I want to add a break between the cities, a page break. I also want to make the columns the right width so it doesn't cut anything off. The easiest way to do that is just double click on the column header. It'll automatically resize it. I'll do that for these columns right here. Okay, next thing I want to do, again, add a page break between the cities here. So I have the table selected. Click on break, manage breaks, select city, and say start on new page, and click apply. And as we can see now, we do have a page break in between cities. So here's Los Angeles. Go to the next page. We have San Francisco. So that was the desired effect of adding the page break in between cities. Now we're seeing that we're not seeing a header here for each page, and we want to see that. Otherwise we don't know what we're looking at. So go back to the start. Let's go into break, manage breaks, and for the city, check on break header, apply. Okay, so again, for the first page now we're seeing the header show up twice. For each subsequent page we're seeing it showing up once. The way to fix that, so we're seeing a header for the city and we're seeing the table header itself here, which is why on the first page we're seeing 2, the next page we're just seeing 1. So this is one of those kind of gotcha things when you start working with tables and breaks. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Takes a little bit of playing around. So I'm going to right click on the table and go down to format table at the bottom here and uncheck show table headers. Click apply and okay. So now here's the first page just showing one header, and same with the second page. So we're getting there. Let's continue to do a bit more formatting to make this look a little bit nicer. By default, when you create a Web Intelligence report and you drop a block of data on, you get these dark blue backgrounds for the headers. I want to make this look a little bit different, so I'm just holding the control key down and selecting all of these cells, right click, format cell, Go to appearance, say no color, no pattern. So I want the background just to be white. The font color was white before, I just want to make it this dark blue. And border, we'll just leave that for now. Let's see what it looks like. Click apply. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, so now I'm seeing a white background, which is a bit nice. I want to also center these elements, center the text here for each of these headers. And I go to alignment, click on center. I don't need to see the lines in between each of these table header cells, so I can get rid of those. It's a little bit tedious. So I select the cell and go to Format, Border here, and click on More Border. Now I can see the different sides that are being bordered. So now I'm just seeing the 3 sides with a border. Click Apply and OK. But you can see I can still see that line here. And the reason is because the city cell is showing borders on both of those sides. So I have to go select the city, and the same thing, more border. I want to get rid of the left and the right side. Apply and OK. So now I'm seeing that gone. So I have to do that for each one of these cells. There may be a quicker way, I'm not sure how to do that, but I'm going to pause the video while I get rid of the lines in between those cells. Okay, so now in the table headers I have cleaned up a little bit. It looks a little bit nicer. So now I want to do just a little bit more formatting on the content here, just to make it a bit more readable. Rather than just have the subtotal just say the year here, let's change that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to merge these 2 cells by clicking and then right click on, oh just a minute, let me select both of them again. Okay, I've got both cells selected, right click, merge. So it's giving me this warning that selected cells contain multiple values. Merging will keep the contents of the first selected cell only, merge anyway. So after I do that, you'll see there's nothing in this cell. I'm just going to put a formula here. I need total 4, and then I'm going to add the year dimension. Make sure that works. So there it does, and we see it now. That looks a bit nicer. Let's just make this row a little thicker, and we'll add a nice, make the borders on here a little bit different for this cell. Go to Format, Border. I sometimes get lost in these tabs on the top here. Most often I just right click on it and go down to Format the cell. That's below my screen capture here, so that's why I'm using the ribbon up top here. So I'm going to have the cell selected, border, more border. So on top I'm going to make the color this gray here and make it medium but plain. Okay, and the bottom of this cell I'm going to make this thick. So a little bit of playing around between selecting the thickness and the style and clicking on the actual side of the cell border you want to have it. So now I have the way I want it. Click Apply and OK. So now this is looking a little bit nicer, a little more easier to read. I got more descriptive information. It would also be nice to have the same type of descriptive text here for the subtotals for the store and for the city. So that's what I'm going to do next. Get rid of the sum text here in both of these cells. Okay, so that's gone. That's fine. Okay, I paused the video while I did the same thing I did for the year here for each one of the breaks between the store and the city. So what I've done here is I've merged these three cells. I put a formula: total plus store name plus sales, and for the city, total sales for city. And so that gives you a good idea of what you can do with blocks / tables and breaking on those tables. I much prefer to use sections in combination with tables. So the next part of this video will be talking about how sections work, how much more flexible they are in my opinion, and how you can use them with tables to have some pretty cool functionality in your web intelligence reports. Before we move into sections, I'll just do one more thing and we'll summarize what we've done with these table formatting. So we'll see that the report title up here, it's only showing on the first page. We'd want to show that on every page. So if we right click on this cell, format cell, layout, repeat on every page, apply, okay. Now go to page 2, we'll see that we have that on every page. Now what we've done so far in this video, and I know this has taken a while, but we've created a block of data, we've added a number of breaks, we've added some formatting, and we talked a little bit about the effect of adding filters for each one of the tables or blocks of data. And the next part of the video will be explaining how to use sections and sections in combination with tables in your web intelligence reports. Now we're going to have a look at sections, which are quite a bit different than working with tables and table breaks. So before I get started, I just want to mention I'm starting out with the same raw data that we had in the first part of this video. I'm going to go ahead and right click on this tab and say duplicate report. Let me just move that over. I'm just going to call this sections 1. So right clicking on it, rename report. Okay. I just want to quickly show you another way to rename the report. So before I had right clicked on the tab name or report name, if you want to call it that, and I went down to rename report, which you can't see on the screen here. The other way to do it is go into page setup, report, and report name. In this case I want to just change it to section 1 instead of sections 1. Click enter. So that's changed the name of the report. We'll start creating some sections in the report. The easiest way to do it, I should mention I removed the cell up here that had the report title. It was just going to get in the way, so I removed it for now. Click on a column, a cell in a column, drag it up over top of the block of data and let go. And you'll see it's created a break on California. California doesn't show up in the block of data underneath, and if I scroll down a bit further, we can see we have for each state: Colorado, DC, etc. Now let's say I also want to have a break for Los Angeles. I could do the same thing, click and drag it above, which is easy, or I can just simply right click and say set as section. So now we're breaking the report down even more. Let's also break it down by store. So we will right click, set a section. Now we're going to format this a bit, line things up a bit so it looks a little prettier. Before I do any more formatting, I should just, before I change things around, I just want to add a sum for the sales revenue here. So highlight that cell, go into functions, sum. Now I should have totals for each block of data. So I have total sales for each store and for each city, for each state. So it's broken down. What I don't have now, which we did have in the other example, was and also a total for each city and for the state. There's a different way we have to do that now with sections. There is no automatic way just to add a cell in here that's going to know what the scope of the functionality is or what the scope of the sum is. So we have to add those. And we'll be doing that a bit later, and this is one area that if you're new to sections, it's not something that's very intuitive. Okay, so I've got this broken down, 3 different stages. I've added a sum here. At this point, what I normally do when I'm working on a report, if I have things set the way I want before I move to the next stage, I just go ahead and duplicate the report. And this way I can always go back to section 1 again. If I mess something up, as I keep working on it in section 2. So I'm going to go to section 2, which I haven't renamed yet. Go to page setup and just call this section 2. So this is the second version of this set of data that I'm working with. Okay, and I'll bring this to the front. Okay, so this looks the same as section 1 now. If I mess up, I can go back to section 1 and start over again, rather than starting off with the raw data, which would be a lot more work as we move forward. Okay, let's keep moving forward here. Before I move forward with any more formatting, I just want to point out a couple things. So you notice that I moved my mouse around the different areas. It's showing me sort of the borders of the section. So this is a section for city. If I move my mouse up, section for state, and a bit further down, section for the actual store. And we want to change the spacing of some of these around because this kind of looks a little bit awkward. We have a big space between California and Los Angeles, a smaller one between Los Angeles and the store. So we'll change that in a minute. The other thing I want to point out, if I click over here on the right hand side, over here, in Web Intelligence, when you use sections, it creates section breaks in the report map. So we see California, Los Angeles, eFashion Los Angeles. And when these reports are exported to PDF, it creates these as bookmarks. This is a very nice thing to have if you have a very large report and you want to make it easy for your users to navigate. And it's in PDF format. You don't have the same functionality if you're just using tables and breaks. You have to use sections in order to get this functionality. Start moving things around here. This Los Angeles city, I want to move over, indent a bit, and the same with the store name even further. And then we'll also move this block of data over underneath the store. Okay, now I'm gonna switch into structure only mode to show you what that looks like and show you how we can change the spacing and so forth of the sections by doing that. So we'll go to structure only. I'm not seeing any data. If I right click on a section here and select edit section, it still confirms that I want to edit the section state, which is the one I was hovering over, so I'll say OK. Now the next thing I can do is I can move things around here. I want to stay within the state section, but I don't want that much space, so I'm just realigning things. This takes a little bit of trial and error, and as you can see, it didn't want to do that. I'm not sure why that is, so sometimes you have to actually play around with things and move them up towards the top of the section. Now I have a big space between state and city. If I make the city section go up a little bit, now I'm seeing they're a little bit closer together. If I bring it up even more, that looks a bit better, and we'll do the same for the store. Bring that section up a little bit. And this again is trial and error, and it's just sort of getting comfortable with how this thing works here. So now I'm just going to make the section for the store name a little bit bigger than the table, so we have a bit of extra space. And okay, I'm just going to click back into with the data, so I'm getting out of the structure only mode to see what this looks like. Yeah, so this looks a little bit better. Things are more evenly spaced. Looks a little bit more easier on the eye. So I'm going to format this table a little bit now. First I'm going to just make the columns a bit wider. The next thing I want to do within the block of data for each of the stores, I do want to add a break within this table. So I'm going to click on the cell. Sorry, I don't want to break on sales revenue. I want to break on the product lines. So that's going to give me a break here, which is what I want. But I don't want the table headers to show for every product line. So when I have the table selected, if I go to the report element, table layout, and break, and manage breaks, for the lines I say I don't want to break on the header, so this is going to remove that header. But watch what happens now. If I click apply and OK, it removed the table header as well. So that's kind of weird. So I have to bring that back, I have to right click on table. I'm scrolling all the way down as I right click to format table and show table headers. If I click apply, it should just show one header now. Yeah, so this, to me, it's a little bit quirky the way that this works, but if you play around with it, you will get it to work the way that you want. So now I want to add a total for each product line here. Go on to analysis, sum. Okay, so I'll add a total for each of the product lines. Try that one more time. Okay, so now we have totals. I can center this accessories by the year here. Again, that's accomplished by having the column selected or the table selected. Analysis, display, and break, and then manage breaks. This is something we did earlier. So duplicate values, we want to say merge, apply. Okay, so now we're seeing that. We'll get rid of this text here for sum, and then we're going to merge these two cells, accessories and this cell next to it. Right click and merge, and we'll just change this to say total for line. Okay, so I didn't like that formula, which makes sense because it's wrong. This is a good example to show you what happens if you type in a wrong formula. So instead of having a double quote, I had a semicolon or a colon there. That ain't gonna work, so let's just make it right. Check the checkbox there to make sure it's a valid formula, and it is. I'm gonna make this lines column a little bit wider. Oops. Try that again. Bit tricky. Have to make sure you see those double arrows or double lines there when you're resizing a column. Okay, so this is looking a little bit better, and I'm going to format the header. I don't like the default colors there. We'll select the 3, right click, format cell. In the appearance, I'm going to say no color, no pattern, font, and make the color dark green. And we'll just see what that looks like. Apply and OK. Okay, you might not normally use these colors, but I'm just showing you a few different things. Now I'm going to just center these horizontally, and I'll add a border on the top and bottom of the totals for each of the product lines. So right click on the cell, or sorry, let me move up a little bit. I have the cell selected, and I go to border, more border. So on the top I want to have a thin, we'll just make these wild colors here. So I'll select orange, thin orange, but I want it to be plain. So you have to play around with these a little bit. The bottom will make it medium orange, click apply, just to give you an idea of what you can do. Okay, so now we've got some borders on these cells. Why didn't it show the orange border on this? Let's go have a look. What's it showing it? So it's showing orange, but the cell above it is overriding that because it's showing a gray thin. So if I uncheck this, let's just see what happens there. So I bet you it's going to change every cell. Okay, it only affected that one cell. I thought it was going to affect every one in the column. So that is the desired effect, to have a thin orange top border and a thicker orange bottom border. So we're getting there. The next thing we're going to do is, at this point I want to mention something. So when we created the sections here, first we created the state, city, and store, and at that point we added a sum to this block of data for sales revenue before we added the break. And because we added the break after adding the sum, we scroll down a bit, we are seeing a total for the store. If we had added the sum before the break was made, or sorry, after the break was made, we would not see a total here. So I'm just going to get rid of this row here. Delete, remove row. Let's just see. Okay, so now this is how it would have looked had we not made that break when we did. So this is where it gets a bit tricky, because you're not sure where you're going to see totals and where you aren't. So let's say that now we don't have a total for per store. We have a total for each line in the store, but we want to add a total in this store section. So I can see the sections give me a bit more room here. If I make this section just a little bit bigger, give me a bit more real estate. Okay, now I want to add a blank cell underneath this block of data. So I go up to report element cell, blank, go down here, add the cell. I want to make it bigger, the width of this table. And I want to add a formula outside of the block of data that's going to give me the total sales for that store. The first thing I'm going to do is I see I have a bottom border on the cell, which you have by default. So I'm going to go ahead here and just say blank. No, sorry, that just added a new cell, which I didn't want. You get rid of that. And I want to go to format, border, none. Okay, so I have a blank cell, nothing in here at this point. Now I want to add a formula to show me the total sales with some text for this section. I want to make this cell a little bit wider here, so let me select it. Make it a bit wider. And now I'm going to go into the formula editor. I'm going to paste in a formula here, and I just have to add the store name. So what this formula is saying is the text total sales for, it's substituting the store name, some blank spaces, and then using the format number function, then I'm saying sales revenue in section. So this is using the in operator, so total sales in the section, and this is the format of the number that I want to use. I do have a separate video that talks all about the operators you can use in Web Intelligence. I'm not going to spend too much time on them on this report, other than to show you that they do work. So I suggest if you want to find out more about the operators for the different variable report scopes, you can watch that video. So I'll just click OK. And now we see that we have kind of a nicer formatted total for Los Angeles. We'll do the same thing for the state, but I have to get to the end of the last city for the state. So here we go. This is for San Francisco. If I move a bit further down, this is the section now for the state, and I want to add another text box in here. So I'm going to pause this for a minute while I do that. Okay, I've added a total sales for the state. Just a few minutes ago I was mentioning that this was the section for the city. It's actually the section for the store. There's a separate section underneath it. We see right here as I move my mouse. This section in between here is for the city, which I'm not going to add a total for, since most of the stores, there's only one store per city. Underneath here is the section for the state. If I have a look at the formula for this, it's exactly the same as the one I used for the store name, except I'm using state instead of the store name dimension, but it's still sales revenue in section. So the in operator, the section keyword, is the secret here. I just want to point out to you, I mentioned the other video that I have. If you go to my YouTube video channel and you see Web Intelligence calculation context, that's the one that talks about these context operators in a lot more detail. So I'd suggest you have a look at that one if you want to find out more about that aspect of it. Okay, let's continue. What we want to do is we have a huge amount of space here between these, which we obviously don't want to have. So the next part here, I'm going to go and see if we can make that look a little bit more compact and a little bit nicer to the end user. While I paused the video, I went ahead and made some alignment changes here. And the way I did that, and the reason I didn't want to show you is because it takes a while to do it sometimes. Went to design mode, structure only. Then while in structure only mode, I played around with these section breaks. As you move your mouse over them, you can see where the section breaks are, and that allowed me to get these closer together. I also had to move these around a bit. So it's a little bit of trial and error for sure. So the little section right here is barely visible. If I move my mouse up and down, this is a section for city, which we're not showing a subtotal for. And this is a section for store, which we are. So a little bit of trial and error of aligning and making the sections smaller or larger to fit your needs. I'll go back to the data mode, and we're going to do a couple more things with this report, and then we'll be done. So now I'll take advantage of those calculation contexts and in operators to add some summary information at the top of each section for each store. So I'm going to go ahead and report element, put a blank cell here. And let's just make it a bit bigger. And let's see the formula that I want to use for this. I'm going to pause it while I put it in. So I've added a blank cell here, and I added a formula to it. Sales revenue in, then open parentheses, and then the store name dimension and close parentheses, which is the same number we have down at the bottom here for that store, 1.366 million. But I want to have a summary and I want to compare it to a total. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause the video, I'm going to add the remaining cells for this section and explain each one. While the video was paused, I added a label here, total sales for store name. Another label, total sales for all stores, and the formula for this was sales revenue in report. So this is every sales revenue amount in the total report. And the percentage of total sales, again, this is just a label, and the formula is sales revenue in section divided by sales revenue in report. Now, if, say I want to put a nice border around this, I can just insert a blank cell. So I have it there. I'll expand it. And I'll add borders to it. We'll make it a double border. Try this again. I have to select the element, more border. There we go. I'll just get rid of what we have existing right now. I'm going to make the color maroon. I'm going to make it dashed border, thick, and all the way around. Apply. Okay. So now what I've added with our context operators is a little summary for each store. If I go down to the next store, or I go down to the next, let's say Austin, Texas, we see that this store had a total of 1.1 million in sales, 8.45% of the total sales. So with sections, you have a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can do in terms of formatting with the context operators. So one more thing I'll show you is how to add a chart into one of these that has data just for this particular section. So let's go ahead and do that now. The way I'm going to do that, I'm going to select this table, I'm going to right click and copy. It's going to move over and paste it underneath this summary. Now it's going to mess things up a bit because, I only selected that cell. That's not what I wanted to do, so let's get rid of that. Live and learn as you go through here, so delete. Let's get that whole table now. Make sure it's the table I select. There we go. So now, oh, I only selected the cell again. It's tricky. You gotta make sure you have your mouse in the right place. Okay, now I have the table selected. Copy. Let's go down here. Paste it. Okay, this is the exact same table. What I want to do is turn this into a pie chart, or we'll make it a line chart. So I'm right clicking, turn into, and I'm selecting line chart. We'll just let it finish formatting here. So you can see it's created a nice little chart here that represents the sales by product line, and only for this particular store. If I go, so just move the chart up and to left a little bit, and let me explain to you what this chart is showing. So it's showing for each of the 3 years the sales for each of the product lines. So if I hover over this, or if I click on this element here, or hover over it, let me get it hovered. Accessories for 2006, 187,650, which is this cell, this amount right there. So I'm not going to get into formatting charts. That would be a whole nother hour-long video at least, but this gives you an idea of the flexibility that you have when you use sections in reports in combination with tables, which is what this is right here, and breaks. To me, it gives you a ton of flexibility. Just using tables and breaks, it's a lot more static, and it's good for just, if you just want to have total sales by product by year and not have any formatting or graphs or comparisons or charts or anything like that. That's fine, but I really like using the two in combination. So to summarize what we did in this video, we started with an example of just a big block of data. This report isn't the same one I was looking at in the first half of the video that we're working on. I somehow must have deleted it. This is one I did earlier, so if this looks a bit earlier than what you saw the first half of the video, that's why. But in summary, this is just one big block of data with breaks set at the line level, the year level, store name, city, and state level, with totals added at each level. And I could have done more fancy formatting to this. You can make these reports look pretty nice as well, but you're kind of limited in terms of what you can do. If you implement sections into breaks, into reports, you can do a lot more. So let's just have a look here at the report we ended up with. So this report, we created sections breaks on state, city, store. Within each store section, we have a block of data that has breaks for the product lines. We have a summary section for each store comparing the total sales for the store, for the total for all stores, and the percentage of total sales. And we just made a copy of this block of data, turned it into a line chart, and we automatically had a line chart show up here. So a lot of things you can do with web intelligence reports. You're basically just limited by your imagination. I've been using the product for almost 13 years, and there's still some things I come across that I'm always learning new ways of doing things. So I hope that you found this video useful. Again, this was Al Williams of Sunset Hill Solutions. Thanks for watching.